Male rape is one of the most stigmatized and silenced traumas in our society. Too many survivors are left believing they're alone, when in fact their pain might be tragically more common than most of us might realize. In this episode, I'm joined by Connor to break that silence. Together we'll talk about the realities of male rape, why consent and shame matter so deeply, and what we can all do to better support survivors. I'm Dr. Marianne, a qualified clinical psychologist, and if you'd like to understand, to support, or to heal, you're in the right place. Please like, subscribe, comment and share so this vital conversation can reach more people. Hi, welcome along to the Aspiring Psychologist Podcast. I am Dr. Marianne Trent and I'm a qualified clinical psychologist, and I'm joined here today by a fellow podcaster actually, Connor Whiteley. Welcome along.
Hi, I'm Marianne, and thank you for having me. So I'm a clinical psychology master's student, and I'm also the host of the Psychology World podcast, and I'm really looking forward to getting into our conversation today.
Me too, but I think before we do, if we just do a little bit of kind of safety and housekeeping, obviously with the nature of our topic today, if someone is listening or watching and there's young ears around, I think probably now is not the most appropriate time for them to engage with this episode. If you're in a car and you've got kids in the car, I think this is one to come back to. Maybe skip along to the next episode or the previous one. Choose this one a little bit later because it is a big topic. It does matter. It's really important. But we do have to do a little bit of a trigger warning that because we're talking about sexual violence, if maybe somebody even is not feeling strong enough to engage with the content themselves right now, we can absolutely give them permission to come back to this later, or maybe skip this one altogether, can't we, Connor?
Yeah, definitely though, because this is a really, really hard topic, and at the end of the day, we just want you to be okay and protect your own mental health.
Yeah, absolutely. So can we talk a little bit about male sexual violence and how prevalent that is? Because some people might live in this world where they think that that's not a thing, or that that's certainly not happening maybe in the UK. Could you talk to us a little bit about that, Connor?
Yeah, definitely. So before I was raped, Yep, so in April of 2024, I also thought that it doesn't happen that often. Women are the only people who tend to get raped, and they tend to suffer a sexual violence. But as I was researching it more, because my own mental health was starting to deteriorate, I realized this is actually a lot more common. So some of the statistics that I found though, especially when it comes to university students, is about 13% of all university students will experience some form of sexual violence. When we focus on a postgrad student, 2.5% of male students will experience sexual violence in their time at a university. But if we look at undergrad students, this actually increases to 6.8%. And the reason why this is important, even though this just sounds like single digit figures, is that if we think about the hundreds of thousands of people that go to university across the Western world, this is still tens upon tens of thousands of different students. So, but this is a massive issue, especially when we start to think about the stark negative mental health implications, like the oppression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, amongst other mental health difficulties.
Yeah, and it's just, the trauma of it. This might involve physical trauma, but certainly the psychological fallout of this as well. And I'm sorry to hear of your experiences, and thank you for pitching this episode to me. It's really important, and I hope that it feels okay for you to discuss this. It was a topic I'd first become aware of when I was at university, actually. And I was a big fan at the time of a Channel 4 show called Hollyoaks. And at the time, there was a character called Luke, and he ended up being raped. And it was shocking and violent. And it really led to that character exploring and experiencing, so many different things. He was in a relationship with a female at the time, and it led to him changing in that relationship and changing how outgoing and confident he was, and the shame and the blame and the guilt. This really can affect people on all levels, can't it, Connor?
Yeah, definitely. And the thing that I found so surprising was after what happened to me was that there's not a single area of your life that isn't like affected. For example, like I also used to be really yes, like outgoing, confident. I could like go into like any room, and I'm also all autistic. So yes, I needed to be like a bit performative to be extroverted at times. So I could do that, and I was happy. But after I was raped, my anxiety peaked, and I could like go out, but at the end of the day, because I was so fearful that I would get vape day again, it would just be a like real struggle. And I would end up having like a panic attacks and just a like mental breakdown as soon as I got home. But it's also interesting and that you should mention like Hollyoaks because after you mentioned it in our emails, I like Googled it. And it's absolutely brilliant that it's getting that representation. But it does feed into some quite problematic myths about male sexual violence and, to be honest, like sexual violence as a whole, like, because there's this big like idea that when you're raped, you're fighting, you're screaming, you're kicking, you're punching, and this myth goes for females and male survivors. But in reality, the vast majority of people don't fight, punch, and like kick their way out. Their way out. Some people, and this is not a good way to like phrase it, simply let it happen. But in reality, it's the fawn response. So you've got the fight, flight, and fawn response, where you were just like freeze up because yes, and like this is what happens to about like 90% of our survivors, including myself though. So it's good that we've got this media representation that's raising awareness, but it doesn't actually reflect about what happens in reality.
I'm with you, yeah, and thank you for helping make that distinction for us. That actually, what we're looking at is it's a lack of consent, actually, and it doesn't always mean, physical violence or restraint. But it's I really think that the powerful video by Thames Valley Police. It's called Tea and Consent, and I would urge anybody, whatever reason you're watching this podcast for, I would urge anybody to check that out on YouTube. I will link that in the show notes and in the description. It's so important that actually we are really being clear explicitly about consent. It's so important, and actually, even if halfway through whatever's happening, maybe you consented to begin with, but then you change your mind and you don't want to do that anymore, that's you withdrawing consent, and that should be honoured and respected. So thank you for making that distinction, Connor.
Yeah, like you're welcome, welcome, but also building upon the idea of consent. Yes, like TV is a really good video, but what I also learned as I was recovering was the idea of enthusiastic consent, because like sometimes you might just say yes out of fear, so that is not consent. That is you saying yes because you're scared about what if you say no? Will the other person hurt you? Will they do something even worse? Even worse than worse. This is where the idea of enthusiastic consent like comes in though. So like if you're having sex or if you're doing but if you're doing like a sexual act, then it's important that when your partner says yes, that they actually really want to do it, they're enthusiastic, they're excited. So that's another important distinction.
It really is. And actually, yeah, it kind of enters into kind of coercive control, which is a really powerful episode I did with Chrissy Roberts a few months ago. And really, we want to make sure that both parties want to be there, are consenting to that, and are in control of when it happens and when it doesn't happen. Yeah. So again, a really important point. And I know in the last few years, Baby Reindeer was a viral Netflix sensation, and that had a storyline around male rape as well, didn't it, Connor?
Yeah, definitely. So I wasn't able to like see that because because this shouldn't be a like surprise to anyone. But after you've been raped, you actually can't watch anything with any like references to like sex and like sexual triggers. But this morning I did do a quick like a Google, and I have heard that it's like really good. But the thing that I like about this is that it does show that women can also be sexual predators and perpetrators of like sexual violence, because that's another like a massive myth in society. Because whenever we tend to think about victim, which I think is very disempowering, negative term for someone who's actually gone through a sexual violence. Yeah, so like when we think about victims, we always tend to think of them as like women. And the term a victim has some very negative connotations because it implies that you're weak, you're broken, you're messed up, which is not helpful as aspiring psychologists. And as a part of our job, when it comes to like supporting those who have been through a sexual trauma, is that sense of empowerment again, and that self confidence. Confidence. And then when we think about the term perpetrator, because of the myths in a society, we tend to think that it's exclusively males who can be perpetrators. So that's why programs like Baby a Reindeer are really useful, right? Because it helps to break those those stereotypes and those myths.
Yeah, exactly. I think there was a moment where she kind of, I think she groped him, and yeah, but I think the male sexual violence was actually male to male in that. But I can
Okay.
absolutely understand why that's not something that you're going to seek out. I absolutely
No.
understand that. Okay. And I think another myth we want to bust as well is about erections and what that might say or not say about someone, whether they're consenting, whether they're up for it, whether they want it. What would you have to say about that, Connor?
Yeah, so but when I was a teenager, I remember this conversation with some of my friends, and so what they did basically turn around and say that, oh, well, men that can't be raped because if they get an erection, then they want it. And at the time, I was like, that can't be right, but I didn't challenge it because I was young and they were my friends. But then after what happened to me, because you do get an erection, because it's a physiological process which you can't control. It is simply a biological process that will happen whether you're actually sexually aroused or not. And not that it makes you really confused. It makes you a question. Oh wait, did I enjoy that? Was I asking for that? And it brings up so many of these really distressing questions, which when you combine with other myths about well, in a society and the lack of conversation around male sexual violence, it is really difficult and it only compounds your trauma. But to answer your question, I would just say that a erection and even an ejaculation does not mean that you're enjoying it. It does not mean that you're consenting. It is simply a biological process which will happen whatever the case.
Yeah, and I think that's a really powerful message to make, actually. And I know from my experiences of working clinically that often rape is used against people of every gender in war and as a way of kind of an act of violence and to kind of break people psychologically and break their spirit in war. So I've often worked with people who have been raped as a result of being a political prisoner or kind of just as a part of kind of military coups or whatever. Like, people have come in and the stories come with the men they came to the village, and then the stories therefore that unfold are horrendous. A real privilege to do that work, but actually when I've worked with men in that situation, they have maybe never told anybody, and they might have had years of mental health work. They might have had lots and lots of work with immigration and kind of seeking asylum and lots of people asking questions, but have never felt able to share that. And then it's only when they're in my therapy room that actually I help them to bridge the gaps and join the dots. And I almost tell them stories. Actually, sometimes people who've been through situations like this have had maybe things like this have happened to them, and they almost can't go there straight away. But we work and we work and we work, and then they're able to have a really important process of being de-shamed. And I'm able to help do that psychoeducation exactly like you did, really, by saying, actually, sometimes when a penis is touched, it will get harder. And sometimes if it's touched with enough, enthusiasm, an orgasm, an ejaculation will happen. And sometimes people can have a lot of shame about their body doing that, because then it gives them mixed messages of, did I enjoy that? Because that's the ultimate sign of enjoyment. But no, you didn't consent for that to happen. This is just what bodies do. And the same thing happens with females as well. When a clitoris is touched, that can respond, and it can feel nice even though it's not something you're consenting to. So I really want to just, yeah, open up and reinforce and enforce that narrative that, someone might even say, well, you enjoyed it. You came, didn't you? That is not consent. That is still something that is not wanted. Really, really important messages.
Yeah, definitely. And like, I thank you for sharing that, Marianne. And I'm really sorry that your clients went through that because that is just awful. And I understand what they've been through, but just like having that open space is really important. So thank you for providing that with your clients.
Yeah, absolutely. Can we think about, what sort of things will help somebody who's been through violence like this? Is it community? Is it friendships? Is it family? Is it therapy? What's your idea about the sort of things that can help, Connor?
So I would say that there's so many different factors that can help, but I would say that there are like a few different areas which are flat out critical for like rape survivor. So in terms of the person themselves though. So initially there will be a massive denial period though, at least in my experience, because after what happened to me happened, for the first 2 days I was like, nope, nothing's happened. I'm just overreacting. My body's just betraying me. I don't know why I'm having these panic attacks and I'm trouble sleeping, but you're just in complete denial. And then something else that you might like experience, besides the like post-traumatic stress disorder, the depression, and the other negative mental health symptoms, is that you don't want to allow yourself to feel with the emotions because let's face it, the emotions and processing what happened to you is awful. It's really distressing. Yeah, stress level, so that can make it really difficult. So sometimes you in a like gauge in like your strategies to either keep yourself really busy so you don't have to think about the emotions, and that's what I did. You also in engage in like strategies which help blunt the emotions. So I know that some people feel with the need to drink a lot of like alcohol or like do with drugs, and yes, these are maladaptive coping mechanisms and we do need to see a port to like break these. But the survivor is just doing everything that they possibly can to survive though. So knowing that it's really important that you do seek out mental health and psychological therapy because like a therapist will be able to like work will help you work through your trauma and also do would just like give you the like tips and the strategies that you need to be able to like improve your life, decrease your psychological stress and integrate the trauma into your life because unfortunately, and if you've like, experienced sexual trauma, you will just want it gone. You will never want to have this, and you would quite happily just like forget it for the rest of your life. But unfortunately, that's not how trauma works. And the healthier option, and the option that I'm really starting to appreciate more in my life, is that you can just integrate it you can like work through it just so like it's in the rear view mirror. So it's happened to you, but it's no longer controlling you. And if you've been through a sexual violence, then me just saying that sounds absolutely impossible because for the 7 months it took me to heal, I thought that I would never heal. I thought I would never get into a relationship, etc. But by working with like counselor who was a rape specialist, then that was really helpful. Also, also as an aspiring clinical psychologist, I knew that systematic work, so working with the body, was important. For example, during like anxiety, the psychoeducation between like in yes against the feeling of anxiety and the like sweaty hands and the physical sensations. I knew that was important, but it was only after my trauma work that I realized, oh, my body is the thing that's freaking out. It's the processor that's gone a bit AWOL, and my nervous system is overreacting to most stimuli. So that's why it was really useful. Whether I learned some like self-soothing techniques like box breathing. So you breathe in for 4, you hold for 4, then you breathe out for 4 form, and then and then like you keep doing that until it activates your parasympathetic nervous system, and you feel calmer though. And then like there's a lot of like other techniques that I really do recommend. And there's a brilliant book that helped me. It's called Healing a Sexual Trauma Workbook by Erica Sherman. So that's some of the tips and tricks that I would recommend like in individual.
Thank you. I'll make sure I link to that in the description and the show notes. And I'm pleased that you've been able to work through that. And I'm pleased that actually you've been able to do that in 7 months as well. That is not prescriptive. Everyone else will have a different
No.
time frame. And depending on speed of access to services, that will be different. But yeah, please do reach out for mental health support if you feel that would be helpful. And I guess it would be remiss of me to not talk about kind of reporting this as a crime to the police as well, and that actually, you can do that at any point. You could be 104 and be like, actually, I would like to talk about this thing that happened to me. And I think often, there's been lots of things in the media about kind of people working in, as choir boys or, as choristers and kind of organised religion. And, that actually you might have been younger when this happens as well, but it's not okay. It's not okay. It's not okay. So yeah, this can be reported as a crime and actually should be if you feel like you've got the resolve for that at that time. But also you might have been physically injured. And so you might need to, go to accident and emergency to help them care for any wounds that you might not even be able to see, but actually things might be very painful. And we just made to make sure that actually you're all right. And they will, of course, understand that you're going to be really upset and distressed, but they will try to care for you as sensitively as they can to make sure that your body is receiving the treatment that it needs to heal as well. So I know these are really, really difficult conversations, but I just really want to try and de-shame this process. It's not your fault that this happened to you, but you do deserve for your body to be healed and ultimately for your mind to be able to be healing again too.
Yeah, definitely. And like one of my favorite quotes from the book was something along the lines of, "It's not your fault because you couldn't have prevented it." And when I read that, I was like, "Oh wow, that's really true. That's really a powerful, yeah, powerful though." And also, like building upon the idea of reporting it was that thankfully there are lots more people coming forward to report their sexual violence. And on the news, we tend to see lots of cases which are thankfully being found guilty. And as a survivor, I love seeing that. I'm really happy for those people because it shows that all of us survivors are really empowered, strong, and we're all just incredible. But during the worst of my mental health, those news reports will also make me cry and a bit stressed because I didn't decide to report my assault and my rape to the police. And I know that the vast majority of people don't either. And I think that it's also good to like have a conversation about that because as a survivor, you can also feel really guilty about not reporting it. But it's understandable and like it's so okay because also as aspiring psychologists, we will to hear about secondary traumatization. So this is when the courts, the police, and the whole criminal justice system as a whole can actually re-traumatize you. So that was one of the reasons why I didn't want to press our charges and I didn't want to go to the police. But also the masculinity point of it, because I didn't want to go to the police. I didn't I was also really scared of being laughed at because of the massive societal myth. So that men don't get raped, or raped, they're like they can't be survivors, and nothing could ever happen to them. So that's something that I was quite scared about. And also, like because of the situation and because of the exact nature of what happened to me, there was no physical evidence though, which is something that's quite important in like prosecutions. So there's lots of like different factors but ultimately, it's your choice. You are the only person who actually has the right to decide if you want to press the charges or not. And if you do, then you are amazing. More power to you. I wish you the best of luck. But equally, if you don't, then that's okay. You're still amazing. You're still strong because you survived.
Thank you, Connor. That was really sensitively handled. And of course, I will make sure that the relevant helplines and bits and pieces are on screen and in the show notes as well. Thank you for bringing this issue to me in the podcast and for allowing us to talk about this. It's a really important narrative. I would really love it if people are watching on YouTube, if they can like, if they can comment, if they can show some support to this really important topic. And similarly, if you're on Spotify, you can actually drop in comments and questions and answers there as well. Thank you again so much for your time, Connor. It's a really valuable conversation.
Yeah, thank you, Marianne, for having me. It's been really fun. I love your podcast. It's brilliant. Thank you for sharing it.
Oh, thank you. And if people want to learn more about you and your podcast, how can they do that, Connor?
Then thank you. So my podcast is the Psychology World podcast, available on all major podcast apps and YouTube. And every Monday we cover a brand new psychology topic, whether it's clinical psychology, cognitive psychology, or a whole other area. And if you want to check out my books, then they're also available on all major ebook retailers, and you can also order them from your local library and Amazon. And my sexual violence focused books are including Breaking the Silence. So this is more information, and it builds very nicely on today's podcast episode. If you want to hear more about my personal journey and the stuff that I experienced, then there's a book coming out called I Am a Survivor, Not a Victim. And then the last one is Healing as a Survivor, which focuses specifically on my counseling sessions and everything that I went through as I healed from sexual violence. Very personal books, but I love them.
Okay, good. And I will make sure that there's links to those in the description and show notes as well. Great. So people can check out the Psychology World podcast wherever they get their podcasts. And I believe you're on YouTube as well, aren't you, Connor?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you for your time, and wishing you the best with everything in future.
Thank you, Maria. Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much to my guest, Connor, for speaking with us about this really important, sensitive topic. I hope you found it helpful. Whether you are watching or listening, you can show your support to the podcast and to this episode. If you are listening on Apple Podcasts, you can rate and review the show. If you're on Spotify, you can actually drop comments or questions about the specific episode, and I'll always reply. The same goes for YouTube. I respond to all of my comments. Please do show your support by dropping comments, supporting, liking, sharing, doing all of those good things, which really helps this channel to grow, helps us to attract audiences, helps people to know that this is a safe place to learn and to be heard. I will be along with the next episode of the podcast from 10 a.m. on Saturdays on YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts from 6 a.m. on Monday. Take care, be kind to yourself, and I'll see you soon.